All right, and welcome to the Nabokov support group.
Nabokov?
I'm going to say it the American way, Nabokov, but I think it's Nabokov. Vladimir Nabokov, something like that. I guess he had a thing where he loved correcting people when they pronounced his name wrong. So we are doing symbols and signs, or is it signs and symbols?
Oh, tricky. When did you read it? And where did you read it?
Published in 1948 in the New Yorker for free. We'll have a link down below for you guys to be able to check it out for free and read along if you'd like. This is actually, I don't know if you know this was written originally in English.
I did not know that.
He spent 20 years in Russia, 20 years in Western Europe, and 20 years in America. So he's got a very segmented life, if you will. And he's got some works that were originally written in Russian and some works that were originally written in English.
Is it his first one in English?
Ooh, I don't know if it was his... I don't know where it falls on the chronology scale. I don't.
Oh, okay.
1948.
I feel like
work back and forth from there.
Yeah, I feel like that was like a trivia thing, though. Like, this was his first piece that he wrote in English. It's probably not true, but that'd be a cool trivia question, though.
For all your friends when you have a Nabokov trivia night.
Trivial Pursuit.
All right, so the plot is really quite straightforward. For those, his choice of words are very interesting through this piece. So to deflower, no pun intended, this plot summary, basically two parents are going to a sanitarium to visit their 21-year-old boy suffering from referential mania. He believes nature and man-made objects conspire against him. The parents are aging Russian Jewish immigrants, and they bring him 10 jars of jellies. Mother dresses in a black dress, no makeup. The dad relies on his brother Isaac, they call the prince, for money. On their way, the subway breaks down on their way to visit their son. It becomes lifeless. Hint, hint. When they arrive, they find out their son attempted suicide again, and they recall a previous attempt in the story. They return home, the mother looks at old photos, dad has a stomach ache. Soon they receive 2 phone calls asking for Charlie. A third time the phone rings and no one picks up. End plot. And that's a very summarized version of the plot. Let's jump into this, Crypto. What do you got for me in terms of talking points?
All right, so as we said, I love the beauty of this story and the way that he writes the story through imagery and his alliterations, and we'll have some quotes later. But I really like how this story unfolds and how subtle it is. And as we go through, there's several different themes that you could try to figure out of what is happening in this story, right? I really like how each of the characters kind of represent something different. And in this story, we see the wife, even though she is dressed in black and she has no makeup on, she definitely represents life. She is the one that's always kind of vibrant. She's the one that's always doing everything. And the husband represents death. He has like the spots on his hand. He's always negative. He's very pessimistic. He has a very negative outlook on life. And
he's got a gaping hole in his teeth.
Yeah, exactly. And the imagery, has that throughout the story. And then you have the son who, as you said, could or could not be Charlie. The phone call, because he's the son throughout the whole story, so he's kind of a mystery figure throughout all of this. And I like how Nabokov uses that to push or drive the story. Are these the characters themselves are plot devices, and that's kind of neat. And that brings us to our themes of the story: is what is going on in this story, right? What is it ultimately about? And there's 3 kind of interpretations you could take from it. I'm going to tackle 2 of them, and then I'm going to throw one over to you for the last one, which is, I think, the best one of all. So I'm going to leave that for you because I love you.
Aww.
So the easiest one is that the boy did commit suicide. So he's attempted to commit suicide. He did commit suicide, and the calls are calling the family to let him know that the boy did indeed kill himself. And there's just a misinterpretation of the name, maybe a language barrier or something like that. And I think this is where we see, like you pointed out, he is an immigrant and moving all over the place. I don't know how many languages he spoke, but if he spoke, Russian and English, depending on where he's at in Europe, that would be difficult for him with this language barrier, right?
I think it was Germany, if I remember correctly. But he had no love for the Germans, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, and it's hinted at in the story as well that the mom and dad in this family could be Jewish also. So I think that, again, we see some influence of World War II in this story. I don't know why we always seem to get on that theme.
We have this habit of just picking 1940s and 50s stories.
And World War II being the most influential event in that century is obviously going to play a role in all of these writers' lives. And I think that we see that here of this Jewish family going through all of these tragedies, and he is using that in the story to drive it forward further. So I think that's the first one. That's the easiest one to get, right? Is the suicide has legitimately happened.
Okay.
The second one goes
behind that.
The second one goes a little bit deeper, and it's harder to see, is the idea that he's in purgatory. Now, when I say he, I don't know if it's the father's in purgatory or the son is in purgatory. What do you think? Did you get a feel for that?
I have never thought about it from this angle. So I've done this piece before. This isn't new to me. This concept is new to me. So I've never heard this before. If I had to guess, this sounds close to me where... Did you know that Nabokov he had something where he confused words with either colors or numbers, it was this confusion. But I feel like it's your own personal form of mind hell, that the boy is in his own mind hell, if you will, is where I would take that, but I don't know the interpretation that you're going with.
See, I was thinking the father is in purgatory, and he's living out this horrible existence over and over and over again.
Oh.
And when you get the third phone call...
When you say living it over and over again, is this going down the Groundhog's down approach?
Yeah.
Or what do you mean by going over and over? What are the hints there? I think I missed that.
I think at the beginning of the story, right? The very, very first line of the story.
So the opening line is, for the fourth time in as many years, they were confronted with the problem of what birthday present to take to a young man. Interesting. So I took it as the fourth time in as many years. I hadn't thought about that from that perspective. That could kind of imply that. That's an interesting way to take that.
No, in the birthday too, right? The birth, the start, the beginning, and at the end, death is finite, like the call. You get the call and the story ends, and then you could loop back again, and you could just read this over and over, and it's kind of like this circle of life. And I think that the father is living through this over and over and over. Again, that one's a little bit tougher to swallow. That one's a little bit tougher to prove, I think. And that one's the least thought after one of critics of this story, or people that interpret the story. So you have the suicide, you have purgatory for the son, maybe, like you said, maybe the father, maybe the mother, who knows. And then you have the third one, which I'm going to give to you because it's the best one.
This is my wheelhouse, baby. Let's do this.
Hit me.
I love it. All right, and I can, and I think you know where we're going with this, but let me break it down for you piece by piece, because I can do this. Do you know what new criticism is?
Like to be critically new?
Okay, let me say it another way. Have you ever heard the death of the author phrase before?
I want to say yes, but I don't know what it means.
It's if you go through a literature degree specifically, you're forced into this, and I think some people unfortunately only learn this. But it's the concept. It's like an old 1967 article, but it's the idea that when I'm reading something, it's no longer the author's. The author is dead. I don't care what the author was thinking about. I don't care what the author has gone through. I'm going to read this text as a standalone piece, and whatever I take from it as a reader is the criticism that I'm going to go with.
That's fair.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a technique, right? You and I strongly believe in authorial intent. You and I strongly believe that the experience of an author shape a story and a person and how they are.
And I think we enjoy breaking down a book with that information because you can get so much more out of a book or a story or a novella.
There's nothing wrong with the other approach, but you and I, we resonate more and feel like we get more out of it with authorial intent, right?
Yes.
So here you give someone with a new criticism training only approach this piece, and I horribly simplified that, but they're going to struggle with this, right? Like, there's so many different ways that you can take this. I think this is really interesting when you do consider authorial intent. It is no secret, Nabokov hated with the passion of a thousand suns. Sigmund Freud. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. I didn't know their rivalry.
Okay. I think we might not be totally in sync with what we think the third criticism is here. So let me go through with it, and you can tell me where I differ here.
Maybe we have a fourth one. That'd be awesome.
Well, no, I think we're somewhat close here. Okay. Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis, psychoanalysis, the idea that, transference, the idea that you can understand what someone might be subconsciously thinking through maybe some conscious thoughts and tests and such. Sounds kind of hokey to some people, particularly when it came out, right? What's the subconscious you're talking about? There's no way you can figure that sort of thing out. There's no way you can transfer, your thoughts and ideas and ideas of one subject to another. Well, some people like Nabokov, when he saw Sigmund Freud's research about how anything penetrating something, okay, whether it be a wedding ring being, penetrated by a man's finger, someone putting their foot in a slipper, anything long and cylindrical being sexual from a man, opening and closing of an umbrella, a cucumber eating a banana.
You're pulling a crypto right now by just going on. Just letting you know.
Freud saw there's a reason for that. When we go through the story, do you remember them talking about the father putting his foot in a slipper? Do you remember him talking about opening and closing an umbrella? Do you remember him talking about having a gaping tooth, about pulling saliva in a long tusk as he pulled out his dental plates? What you start to realize is that there are a ton of Freudian references and symbols throughout this piece. What if he wrote this for one man? What if he wrote this piece for Sigmund Freud, where he says, you're so full of crap. You have all of these symbols that you think represent, the subconscious mind or sexuality coming out in the conscious mind. It's all BS, is what Nabokov would say. And he creates this veiled symbol and sign-ridden story specifically without intent of connecting it to a literary goal, other than just to kind of have it just be this gigantic screw you to Sigmund Freud. All of these signs and symbols, everything means nothing. It's all just representations of Freud's fake symbology in his eyes to make fun of the psychologist Sigmund Freud.
No, I like it. I think that's great. I think we're on the same page here. So I didn't know maybe he wrote it for one specific person, but I definitely think the best interpretation of this is he's messing with us. There is no point at all.
I want to nuance it here. I disagree. I don't think he's messing with the reader, and I think it's wrong to think. Because I don't want people to walk away with this and then think I'm a fool for Nabokov playing this type of a cruel trick on me. I don't think that's correct. I think to nuance it very specifically, in the same way that you and I are we're strongly behind authorial intent, and we do believe the author matters when it comes to interpreting a text. It's a different way of breaking down as opposed to new criticism. And again, it's a very simplified way of talking about it and looking at it. We can have a whole nother video where we talk about what it really is.
Yeah. Well, I guess
it's not that he's messing with the reader. It's that he's making fun of the approach of how Freud breaks down signs and symbols.
Yeah, and I think that he's making fun of. Obviously, I learned this now of Freud of overreading, which sometimes I think we're guilty of. Where we're looking for things where there is nothing, and
he's putting I love it.
Yeah, he's putting all these signs and symbols in there, and there's 3. It means nothing. It's diddly squat, and he's doing this to mess Not with us maybe
Yes.
specifically, but again, if we take him out of it, if we take Freud out of it, and it's just us reading it, we are the person that is the fool. I mean, and you don't have to get mad about that, but it's a lesson learned, right? Be conscientious of over-analyzing things to meet your own goal and needs.
Yes, perfectly stated. I can't say anything else on that, but to touch on one thing that you said, it is probably super hard to write a red herring fest the way that, if that is what he intended, to write a story of nothing but red herrings. That's hard to do. That's
All right, so let's go to rating. I'm excited now.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
8.5 out of 10.
Ooh, nice. Good.
And you, sir?
You want to take a guess? Okay. It doesn't dethrone. But
that was my next question. So if you didn't know, we're doing a month of short stories of the greatest short stories allegedly ever written. Crypto over here, when he says dethrone, his favorite short story of all time is Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut. We're seeing if we can replace that.
This is number 2.
Can we find this? This is number 2?
Number 2. I love this story because
oh my gosh, is this a 9.5?
9.5. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think that there's anything to really fix about this story. I get the ending without there being an ending. The alliteration is amazing.
It is.
You could throw the quote up here. I mean, I read this and while I was like grading papers and the kids were working on stuff, and I was reading this out loud and I started laughing out loud in class, and the kids looked up at me and were like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I just read something funny." And he's like, "Her fat-faced fiance fell out." That's awesome. I don't know. I loved this story.
Yeah.
So, and if you couldn't tell throughout the whole video, I was really, really enthusiastic about it. I love all the different ways you can view this. It's a great teaching tool too, and I think this can change your life. Of be careful when you are being a critical reader, and it makes you think about yourself.
Very good. So what you really wanted to do was tear a hole in this book and jump right in.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah, I used a quote from the book and kind of changed it a little bit. All right, anyways, guys, we do literature breakdowns all the time here on the channel. Every Monday and Thursday, we promise a video, and we've been pretty consistent about getting some bonus videos out as well. So please consider subscribing to join us on our literary discussions and fun. Una out, guys.
Slide out.